you have the phones or access to your smartphones is the reason why we are about to have the next session. Nowadays, 2/3 of the population have access to the internet. And out of that fraction, 92% access the web through their smartphones. This immense acceleration in digitalization was in big part brought by COVID-19. And hence, this is now affecting the foreign direct investments and the world of work. But numerous challenges still remain. We are yet to define which are the best strategies to attract more investment in digital FDI, as well as reap the benefits of this increased digitalization. Investment promotion agencies should be the ones spearheading this process in advising the respective governments how to use these digital tools. So this is exactly what we're about to discuss today. The policies and regulations that governments can implement to attract digital investments, how digital FDI can enable projects, what the role of IPA in this process can be, and lastly, how IPAs and companies together can embrace digital tools. So, without further ado, please let me introduce you to our distinguished panel of speakers. Speakers, as I call you, please do take your seats. The first one is Pilar Madrigal, the Director of Investment Advisory at CINDE, where she has worked for the past 24 years. She is a strategic-minded professional with experience planning and executing investment promotion and focusing on industry development to create sustainable economic growth. Our second panelist is Caroline King, the Global Head of Business Development and Government Affairs at SAP. Maurizio Tamagnini, Chairman of the Supervisory Board at ST Microelectronics NV. ST Microelectronics is a leading semiconductors manufacturer listed on the Milan, Paris, and New York stock exchanges with a market capitalization of approximately 30 billion euros. Bernardo Calzadilla Sarmiento, the Director at the Division of Fair Production, Sustainability Standards and Trade at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Dr. Calzadilla has a well-rounded experience in investment promotion, funds, mobilization, and social responsibility, with more than 30 years of international experience in global development. And last, but definitely not least, please welcome the moderator of this session, Matthew Stevenson, the Head of Investment Policy and Practice at the World Economic Forum. At the WEF, he manages the Global Investment Policy and Practice Initiative, including the projects in 4 countries. He has helped develop the concept of digital FDI, the first toolkit on outward FDI, measures to increase sustainable investment, and leveraging technologies for sustainable development. Matthew, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, and warm greetings to everyone today. I thought the opening session was really energizing and set a beautiful tone. I hope we can continue that good energy. It's a pleasure to see all of you today. We at the World Economic Forum are really pleased to co-organize with WAIPA this first session on digital FDI. So this term is a little bit new, digital FDI. And so, what is it? What is digital FDI? Is it FDI in certain sectors? Specifically, digital-oriented sectors? Is it FDI in specific technologies? The answer is yes and yes, but it's a lot more. In the way we approach it, it can be FDI in any sector because of the rapid digital transformation that is taking place across almost all sectors and all activities. And digital FDI can bring with it not only capital, but also the knowledge and the technology to help with digital transformation that all economies are seeking to drive. At the same time that it can take place in any sector, there are some sectors that may be particularly important because they can be enablers for other sectors. And here we think of telecoms, we think of semiconductors that go into all sorts of manufacturing processes. We think of IT services, such as software, that help empower and enable other industries to grow. And so I think the secret to attracting digital FDI is to create what you could call digital-friendly investment climates. We all know we want to create friendly, investment-friendly investment climates, but now it has to be digital-friendly investment climates as well. And I think today we'll discuss how to do that and what that means in a bit more detail. We contend that you need certain enablers to create digital-friendly investment climates, and these enablers can take the form of policies, measures, regulations, infrastructure, and perhaps others that we'll discuss and identify today, speaking with experienced actors who are doing this every day. At the World Economic Forum, building on earlier UNCTAD work, we proposed a framework to help organize this effort that sees attracting and facilitating digital FDI in 3 pillars. The first would be digital FDI in startups and new businesses. And this has been a theme, I think, of this conference. And we all want to grow jobs through new business activities. And these new businesses may require specific enablers. Then second, attracting digital FDI could take place in existing businesses that are seeking to transform their ways of carrying out their operations. And these existing businesses may require different support, different enablers. And then finally, attracting digital FDI in infrastructure, which underpins the first 2. So today, I'm going to encourage our panel to identify what enablers they would like to convey to IPAs, that they would like to suggest IPAs and others adopt to precisely enable digital FDI in these 3 different areas. So over the next hour or so, before we open it up to questions, so please have your questions ready. I will open it up for the audience to ask whatever they wish of our panel. We're going to really think about this in 2 ways. First, how to create and support and enable the demand for digital FDI. Because investors are out there and they're looking to carry out these investments. They have the capital. We heard the capital is there. James said 5.3 trillion. So how to support and enable the demand? And that's by asking the question, what do investors need? What do investors need to invest in the digital economy? And then we'll talk about the supply. And this is what governments can do to meet the demand. What kind of ecosystems, what kind of regulatory frameworks can they provide that will be digital friendly? And then what can we all do together, IPAs and investors, to connect the supply and demand, to overcome maybe some information asymmetries, some coordination failures, some outdated regulations, sort of to be able to connect those dots, as we say. So that is what the panel will be invited to address today and to share their insights and experience on all of the above. And so with that preamble, I would like to ask my WAIPA colleagues if our opening speaker, His Excellency Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim, Minister of Communications and the Digital Economy of Nigeria, is connected. And if he's not, we will go directly to our first panelist and bring him in whenever he's able to do so. But Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim, His Excellency, the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy of Nigeria, has quite a few insights to share with us, so I'm looking forward to when he gets online. So let's turn first to Maurizio Tamagnini, who, as we heard from our overall moderator, is the chair of ST Microelectronics, a huge firm in this business, $30 billion capitalization. But he's not only the chair of a semiconductor firm, which we know how important semiconductors are today. We all know that. He's also the CEO and managing director of an investment firm that carries out investment himself, called FSI, which is one of the largest in Europe. It's capitalized by sovereign wealth funds around the world, also institutional investors, banks, family offices, and it's focused on Italian corporates. So, Maurizio, if I can turn to you first. You're doing this every day. You're in the field. So what are your thoughts? How to create digital-friendly investment climates, and what advice would you give the room?
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you to the World Economic Forum and to WAIPA for inviting me here. Well, first, I would like to, as I met my friend here waiting for the start of the conference, I would like to spend 1 minute, maybe less, on what happens to the chip shortage in the last 2 to 3 years, which I think many people are worried. My wife says, look, we can't buy a new car, other people can't buy a washing machine, other people are waiting for a long time. Well, in simple words, 3 factors which happened simultaneously together. Chips are really the brick of every home, of every house. Everything we do now, even when we cook bread, we use electronics. So think of chips as really being the brick of everything related to our society. So we do produce a certain amount of those bricks because to produce them, you need fabs that cost billions of dollars, and then we'll get into digital FDIs. And therefore, you don't keep too much overcapacity when you have such a capital-intensive industry. So we got in 2020, when pandemics hit, with a fixed amount of capacity. And at that point, people didn't go to work, but they started using boxes called Zoom, Teams, WebEx, so on and so forth. So the amount of chips went from 100%, that's my guess estimate, to a multiple of that, possibly twice as much. First factor. Then second factor, at the same time, not because we went from work to Zoom, but because really certain industries hit a certain moment in their life, and I think my colleague here from SAP could witness much more than me with more competency, certain industries in automotive mostly, went from usage of 100% of the chips, in certain cases, automotive, to 1,000% of the chips. Certain cars used $100 to $150 per car of chips. Now they use $1,000 to $1,500 of chips. So these bricks needed were quite a bit. And then finally, what happened? With the pandemics, we broke the global logistics. So the global logistics is very important in many industries, but it's very important for chips that usually go in and out a shop more than 10 times before they get really delivered to the clients. So all those 3 things created a huge shortage that is being dealt with, that is going to go through 2023 still with some shortage, but it's definitely being very forcefully dealt. And here is the opportunity in terms of digital FDIs. If you simply pile up the various programs that the Europe CHIPS Act, around 40 to 45 billion, the US CHIPS Act, around 50 billion, the China program, which could be up to 100 billion. Then you had Japan, you had India. I saw several friends. India has a 10 billion program. And Korea, you are having a 250 billion estimate aggregated of potential pool of money, of state, of public money that wants to get to work and be associated with private money, mainly the money of the chip manufacturers around the globe, and they need to get together, they need to get into a marriage. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's at the same time a very challenging opportunity where you have to put skills and money together. I will just give you 2 or 3 examples on how this money can work together and get married, and then I will go back to our chairman question on what we need to get it worked, and not just to make a communication. By the way, I think it will get worked, and there will be a lot of concrete actions here, because people see how those little bricks are becoming even smaller There is a law for the STEM people in the room, they will know it. It's called the Moore Law, where basically every a certain amount of period, you will inject more information, double the information in less of the space. Now, Moore Law doesn't work anymore. We're getting into the more of more, or more of more, which basically means that not only we're doing two-dimensional chips, but we're doing three-dimensional chips. We're putting stories into it, and smaller and smaller. So the opportunity to create digital infrastructure and attract them is humongous. The examples. Recently, our company announced a joint venture with Global Foundries. Global Foundries is a US manufacturer, fab manufacturer, with ownership, is publicly traded now, with ownership from Abu Dhabi, to form a next layer of a fab, of a plant in our Grenoble center. It's a multi-billion investment. And that is a project where you have two chip makers, two different regional chip makers getting together to build critical mass and to therefore achieve synergies and get to the curve very quickly. Clearly, with the French state chipping in under the European Chips Act in a major way. Secondly, another example, Intel recently announced a mega fab in Arizona, where they've chosen, based on the reading that I've done on the materials available that has been released, they've chosen to partner with a large financial investor, Brooksfield. Very interesting. So you have in an industrial outfit to build a frontier chip plant, an investor that ties together under an arrangement. I think it's very interesting. India. Has been published that Foxconn, the large Taiwanese, the giant Taiwanese electronics manufacturer, tied up with a local player, is an industrial mining player called Vedanta, to produce in Gujarat a large plant. So India, which is a new country in the semiconductor industry, is also making his inroad, clearly again, with a very strong support of the Indian government under the Modi Go to India Chips Act. There, again, you have a different formula. You have a local incumbent manufacturer, or actually is a mining company, so is a presence local, that gets together with a sector participant. Finally, another interesting example has been published a few days ago, Wolfspeed, which is a US new generation chip manufacturer, which is silicon carbide, producing a new plant in North Carolina. That's another interesting reason why North Carolina. We will get to that later, because FDI and digital FDI are not only attractions, and if you wish, tension to attract among regions, countries, but also regions inside of a country. And what the two Carolinas have done in terms of attracting and building an environment which is very friendly to digital investment is something we could talk about it. I will finish, Mr. Chairman, with what we need to get those plants built, this production gone to the market, and therefore to serve the best the consumer. By the way, the industry has already done quite a bit and is doing on its own quite a bit. So, and the European chip makers industry is very strong. It is not true that Europe doesn't produce chips. Europe is very strong in producing the chips where the European industries are strong, automotive and industrials. We're less strong in producing chips, for instance, for iPhones, for phones, and for the consumer electronics. So that needs to be rectified in terms of narrative. What I think it would be unspeakable is for the governments and those CHIPS Act to be balanced in how they support the frontier investments, which are very important, i.e. providing grants and supports for the new technologies, which is wonderful. At the same time, it's quite important to help producing plants for the current technologies. Because what the society needs, what the clients and the consumers need for the next 10 years, for 95% of the demand, is the current technologies. So there's a gap to be built. And the US CHIPS Act is allowing 10 billion for the current technologies. For instance, Europe doesn't yet allow support for the current technologies, which the chip manufacturers that will produce in this region and globally will need. So just to finish up, to give you one concrete potential, very important support that the governments regionally and at the higher level at the EU could consider is to have a portion of those CHIPS Act dedicated to producing plants for the current technologies, which will go on for quite some time, decades, because the new technologies will only come in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, as this is a very long planned industry where you invest today to get the fruit of your investment several years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maurizio, if I may. And I think this is a really important sector. We know that it's only going to grow in the future. So there's space for all IPAs to really attract this kind of investment. I mean, from a multiple of 100, I think your estimate. So there'll need to be chip manufacturing plants everywhere. Then we heard about resiliency and how important it is, that they might be located in many different economies. So some of the thoughts I heard from you were lessons maybe for IPAs to think about in terms of when they approach investors, are maybe to not forget frontier versus current technologies, to think of different configurations of how the capital and the deal can be made in different economies, and to also think about the subnational opportunities with the Carolinas and so forth, and how they might create regional ecosystems. So just some thoughts that came out, but I think everybody's very, very interested in knowing how to attract this kind of high quality manufacturing, high-skilled investment in their own economies, so thank you. I'd like to turn now to Caroline King. I think her perspective will be very complementary because she works in the software industry, SAP in particular, where Caroline King is the global head of business development in the government affairs. And Caroline, I'd be very, very grateful for your insights. Your company, which has over 100,000 employees around the world, so a global footprint, and an iconic name, SAP, known as being a leader in the field of software services. I'd like to ask you the same question I asked Mr. Tambagnini, namely, what your company would need to see to be keen and interested to invest in another jurisdiction, and what kind of advice you would give IPAs to create digital-friendly investment climates.
Thanks, Matthew. And thanks also for the opening comments from Maurizio. You lay the foundation. I talk a little bit about software, the house on top of the foundation. The investment climate is, of course, a bit different for a software company. It's not so much about tax incentives or IT parks. It's about open, robust, digital-friendly economies. It's about robust startup communities, the right digital skills, and certainly a regulatory environment that is open and liberal. And this is something I think we'll get to maybe a little later in our conversation, and of great concern. I've been working for SAP for over 20 years. It's a company that's just passed its 50th mark, which is astounding in this industry, astounding in Europe. We're still the world's leader in business software. We've seen a lot of change. We have to shift into growth markets continually. It's very interesting for me from a government affairs perspective to see how important politics has become for our board. I think I'm losing my mic at the back of my head. And my neck is very stiff, Maurizio. I'm not being impolite. It's just that I can't really look in your direction today. Yeah, and I can't do it for the mic as well. So I'll keep looking this way. But I am very interested to hear what you say, because we obviously, without the hardware, without the foundation, we can't develop the software on top. The other comment that I want to make is that yes, SAP is an LE. Often we're called the dinosaur on the market. It's a very unfair picture of where digital is headed these days. We can't do this innovation without co-innovation. We cannot keep track with the pace of change, technological change. I'm a dinosaur within the company. I have to engage in training all the time. SAP has to change its business model every couple of years. We can't keep pace and stay in that niche in the market without cooperation and support from SMEs, from startups. So in all of these countries where we expand, that base is key. We invested 5.9 billion euros in research and development 2021. We work with universities around the globe. We train people. I would have mentioned this to the Nigerian minister, but I think that we'll get that chance also in a little bit later. We need that ecosystem in order to innovate. Maybe if I may be permitted, just with regard to your second, I thought it was nice, Matthew, thank you for the opportunity around your pillars, because that helped sort my thoughts. There's a lot of material, and it's not always so easy to address. Digital transformation, and I think, Bernardo, we talked about this in prepping for this as well. It's not about a layer on top of organizations. It's really about cultural transformation. SAP is... the hardest part of the project is implementation. The ROI can be seen in about 2 years on average, but without good partners on the ground to do the implementation who know what they're doing, it's a painful process. And it's really as much about the organization itself and the culture and the processes within it as it is about the technology. And last but not least, to the regulatory side, but maybe we will have a chance to talk about this a little bit down the line. We're very concerned about digital sovereignty. We're supportive of it where we can be. We understand nations and countries' interests, and we understand what's happened also as a result of the pandemic, which did give a huge push to digital transformation finally, but created also a lot of nervousness. And now we're concerned about these increasing silos in many markets that are growth markets, China, India, Brazil, these huge, interesting markets, but are increasingly difficult to maneuver in. And the future of technology are cloud services, and if we don't allow those cross-border data flows, you won't see the growth in the digital economy overall.
Thank you, Caroline. I understand that the minister has joined us, so I'd invite us to pull him up on the screen. But just to build on your last point of silos, data sovereignty, I think this is something we can get into. Maybe this is a message that IPAs need to hear when they carry out policy advocacy with their own governments. Of course, there are policy trade-offs, competing policy goals, but hearing directly from the business community what they would need for effective ecosystems, as you put it, that would attract your investment, I think is a very much of a worthwhile discussion to have here today with this audience. And so after our two business speakers, very grateful for your operational, real-life insights, which is what we really need. We're going to have two government voices, the minister from Nigeria, and then Pilar, and then we'll turn to Bernardo, who will provide sort of the overview of how the support that can help operationalize all of the above with technical assistance and capacity building. So I'd invite our WAIPA colleagues to put the minister up, and if he's not there, which I thought he was, then I will continue.
I'm here, please.
Mr. Pantami, Your Excellency, I'm so happy to see you again.
Thank you.
This is Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim, His Excellency Minister of Communications and the Digital Economy of Nigeria. I had the pleasure of meeting him in person about 3 months ago in Davos, and it's so good to see you again, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
I know Nigeria is really playing a leadership role in the area of digital FDI. And you are the minister responsible for the digital economy. You've written a book on the datafication of society and the new opportunities it brings. Your Excellency, I'd welcome your thoughts as to what what can be done in this area to grow digital FDI?
Thank you very much for having me, and accept my apologies for my inability to be with you physically due to other official engagements that took me outside my country. But I insisted that I must be here with you virtually to say a word or two because of how important the program is. Furthermore, permit me to begin by commending the effort of the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies and the World Economic Forum for organizing this World Investment Conference. I think it's very apt, and it comes at the right time that we need to work hard to ensure that we attract more digital foreign direct investment into our countries towards achieving the global digitalization and also the digitalization of the global economy as well. As you earlier mentioned, in Davos on 23rd May 2022, we officially launched the Digital Foreign Direct Investment along with the President of our World Economic Forum and also the Secretary General of Digital Cooperation Organization. And after launching that, we had been working day in, day out to attract more investment into Nigeria. What actually motivated us to focus more on that is the opportunities in the world, particularly in the digital economy sector. For example, the World Economic Forum in its report of August 2022, just last month, predicted that by 2025, the value of digital economy globally will be up to 20.8 billion, 20.8 trillion USD. This is a huge amount of money, 20.8 trillion USD in the next 3 years. And furthermore, if you look at the opportunities, also according to data reportal, that so far the total number of people that are connected as of July 2022 in the whole world is just a little above 5 billion people. By implication, we have around 36% of unconnected people globally. So averagely, the percentage of connected people, we can say 2/3, while 1/3 are still unconnected. And furthermore, also, if you look at the report of the World Bank, they have also mentioned that if we can increase the level of connectivity to around 75, meaning if we can achieve more, at least 9% of connectivity, that will automatically increase the global gross domestic product by 2 trillion USD annually. So there are so many opportunities. It is because of this, we feel that digital economy and particularly digital foreign direct investment is something that will support the global economy, particularly in Nigeria, which is the most populous country in Africa, and also the largest economy in Africa, and also the largest digital economy in Africa, among many others. So we think with our population that is averagely 18.3 years old, and also with our geographical location, with our huge population, and also the largest economy in Africa, there are so many opportunities that Nigeria can attract from digital foreign direct investment. And this is just in summary to respond to the question.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And it's exciting to see the energy behind, putting in place the ecosystems that we talked about, the enablers in Nigeria. And I am sure IPAs here gathered will want to do the same in their own economies through these digital FDI enabling projects. I understand if you at any point need to leave us because you're on the road. I think you're in your hotel room, if I'm not mistaken. It looks like a very nice room on the road. But if you are able to stay, you're welcome. But if you need to depart, we completely understand. It's at your discretion, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Thank you for understanding. You are invited to come and take over the hotel room, please.
Thank you. Pilar, I'd like to turn to you next as our second government representative. working for CINDE, the Investment Promotion Agency of Costa Rica, where you've been for 24 years. You're the Director of Investment Advisory. So you play a key role in providing sort of the guidance, the counsel to the authorities to how to create the ecosystems. This is a word that is coming up again and again after Caroline used it, to attract digital FDI. Of course, Costa Rica is famous for having attracted Intel. This was already 20 years ago. So you were a pioneer in this space. We know that. 25. Yes. Armando Helbrion, also from Costa Rica, corrected me 25 years ago. So clearly you've done this before, and would love to hear your thoughts and your advice for others in terms of how to do this.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I have to move a little further because I don't reach. So I'm going to move here a little further in the seat. So just for you and everybody to know, Armando here was my first boss at CINDE. Now he works at the World Bank. And we did start that kind of journey together when we brought Intel. It was very interesting to see that, Intel also started creating an ecosystem around it with a few of their suppliers coming in. And then what I have seen, and I think it's important for everybody to know, is that everybody reminds me how old I am every time they say that I've been here for 24 years. But the reality is that I've seen the drivers of the companies change through these years and through these decades. Way back then, when Intel was on his look for the operations, quite frankly, incentives were very. I can talk in this one, not in this one. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to take this one off because it's kind of uncomfortable. But anyways, it's going to stay right there. So the drivers, a lot of them were incentives, and they were very aggressively looking for incentives. And we remember being very fiercely providing as much as we could, for the company to consider, and we finally landed the company in Costa Rica. Then we moved into cost efficiencies, and then I remember the time in which everybody started looking to Asia because it was a clear scenario of where they would look. They were finding the best efficiencies, and China being a very big market. And that was also kind of a driver then. But taking into consideration what has been said by a number of us is right now, quite frankly, the number one driver is the skill set. We can talk all about the infrastructure, we can talk all about the need for these facilities to grow and these enablers to grow, but if there are not, the skills are not there, it's going to be very difficult for the industry to continue, and for the countries, quite frankly, to get involved in the knowledge service economy. We happen to be blessed because in our journey, we were able to attract everything that has to do today. We talk about smart manufacturing, then we talk about, includes, all the high tech. Then we have the knowledge service economy, which includes software and IT and other knowledge and shared services and so on and so forth. And also we have what we call the health and well-being, in which medtech plays a big role. And we have been able to close that cycle through the years, and we find convergence. Costa Rica is only 50,000 square kilometers. That's it. And we've attracted about 400 companies that form that and that are part of that convergence. So we have been very aggressive in trying to collaborate with the companies. In the sense of CINDE, we are actually an NGO. We've worked with 10 different governments. And we really are the translators. We sit down with them, we have working groups, and we talk to the HR managers, among other executives on every 3 months. We sit with them, with the multinationals, with the HR managers that are there, and we say, what do you need? What are you going to need in 6 months? What are you going to need in 2 years? What are you going to need in 5? And then we bring the academia, and we say, do you have this? Do you need to change the curricula? And we do that constantly. We also have been taking advantage of the digital economy as well to recently launch a platform that actually was done by ourselves at CINDE, in which, by using artificial intelligence, we have gathered data that is encompassing its 17 sectors, 320 abilities, and 320 even behavioral abilities. And with that, when the person actually gets in and uses the platform, it will automatically provide you with what is your route to achieve that, that skill. So not only you develop that, and it's quick, it's, you know, it's really fed on an everyday basis with data. But then once we've had that data, then we have also partnered with the academia. And so the academia is providing scholarships, it's providing, the country is allowing and subsidizing some of this to develop the skills. The companies, as we sit with them every day, they are also part of this. So at the end of the day, if we're talking about enablers, and I don't know if my colleagues agree with me, but I talk about, it sounds strange, but I talk about the raw material. The raw material for any of the digital economies of anybody is the skill sets. And if there is anything that I can tell the audience, is that it's your people that will enable the companies to go. There will be more incentives, and you'll give some incentives here, and tomorrow there are going to be more incentives in another country. There's going to be more efficiencies in other countries. The economy goes up and down. But the people, your people, and how they represent and how they actually enable the companies to grow, that's what you need to focus in.
Thank you very much, Pilar. It's very interesting, your journey from incentives to cost efficiencies to skills as being the main driver. We, in our survey of investors a few years ago, we asked them what was the single most important determinant to invest in the digital economy, and skills came out as the top, as the overall most. Of course, within specific pillars, there could be specific things such as startups, protection of IP and so forth. But overall, when you looked at the economy overall, it was skills, exactly as you found. May I just ask you to just say one more sentence on your platform, because it sounded so cool, the AI part. So I'm a young person and I want to get digital skills. I go on the platform, I put in my goals, and it tells me what I need to do, and then it feeds that information to the academic communities to provide the services?
Yes, it's actually called Future Up. As you know, they say by the 2025, we've lost 85 million jobs, but by 2025, we're going to create 97 million jobs. So the idea of this platform is that you put your abilities, your technical abilities, and your preferences, and it allows you to reskill. It gives you the path to say, okay, yes, if you want reskilling, this is where you have to go.
Perfect.
And yes, and then you match that with the rest of the educational system in your country.
Thank you. I tried to tease out a little bit the things that I think could be relevant to every IPA in every country, because everybody's trying to reskill, upskill. So, you know, these kinds of tools. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really nice transition to Bernardo.
Sorry, Bernardo. And you know what? I'm going to tell you the best thing about this. And talking about the CHIPS Act and the regional efforts, right? We've actually started working with the government of Colombia to show them how to also develop this type of synergies. And the reason being is because, yes, we're Costa Rica, but as long as everybody around us and around the world provides the right talent and the right tools, it's only in benefit of the industry and potentially the growth and potentially opportunities to bring some. So it's something that we're also sharing, and we'll be happy to share with anybody.
Well, thank you for sharing that widely. I'm sure some people may take you up on that in the coffee break or the lunch after this. You know where to find her, the lady in the blue dress. Bernardo, I think Pilar queued you up very, very beautifully because she talked about skills and the need for skills. So Bernardo is Managing Director for Digitalization, Technology, and Agribusiness at UNIDO, as well as the Director for Digitalization, Technology, and Innovation. But even before this, he was Director of Technical Assistance and Training at ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. So essentially, Bernardo could correct me, but Bernardo is there to work with countries and companies to provide the right ecosystems, to provide the training, the capacity building for SMEs, for others, to have the right enablers to realize the opportunities in the digital economy, including through investment. And so when Pilar started to talk about the skills, the capacity, the training needed, I just thought it was a perfect segue to what you do, Bernardo, to sort of breathe life into this whole ecosystem. What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, colleagues. Let me just start by saying how delighted and honored I am to be here. We met on Friday, virtually. What a difference, yeah? What a difference to be here today with you, with all this wonderful audience. It makes a difference. Thank you, WAIPA, thank you, WEF, for inviting us to be part of this panel. And definitely, we are here to bring from UNIDO the perspective of developing countries. And even there, I see that Costa Rica is well ahead. But I started my experience also around the time, and I had the opportunity as a young professional to undertake a feasibility study in Central America to see where the Koreans would be best investing in Central America. It was about selecting the sectors, and obviously coming from Korea, you had electronics, you had textiles, and to remember just two, and to make the point, and there was a big difference, certainly in cost of labor. I mean, Costa Rica was like 5 times more expensive than Guatemala, but the conclusion was very simple. You have to invest in electronics in Costa Rica and go for textile to Guatemala. And this is where we can start what we see as UNIDO. But let me say, this digital transformation has been going on together with a very disruptive era, I would say, in which we are. Technological transformation has been going on. Climate change has been going on. Disruption of globalization has been going on. On the top, we had COVID. On the top, we had the energy crisis due to the war. But we have been going on in this space extremely difficult times, and this will continue. And we have been looking the last years on digital transformation, Industry 4.0, how to be ready to adapt the Internet of Things, the data-driven economy, blockchain, robotics, and so on. And we have established a list of priorities, and definitely the big challenge is there are too many inequalities. Yeah, and when you want to tackle inequalities, you have to focus on people. I could not agree more. And when you talk about people, in order to absorb these technologies from the basics, yeah, to the more sophisticated, yeah, you need skills. Yeah, you need skills, because if you don't have the human resources to help you to make the companies then to be ready to support, you can have access to finance, to technology, but you will not be able to transform digitally your enterprise. And what was said before, we need the innovation ecosystem. The innovation ecosystem, and maybe that's a message to the IPAs, they need to be a proactive member of the innovation ecosystem sometimes we see in some countries that they are not an integrated part of it, but they should be leaders of the innovation ecosystem. And it's fundamental because probably this is when we look at investment, the investor will look at what else do we have there. In this framework we developed, we had also the partnerships, and the partnerships seems to be an abstract concept, but this is the only way that you bring the private sector on board. We have our ITPO network, Investment and Technology Promotion Offices Network, and we managed to work together with a company from Japan to bring geothermal energy through the Internet of Things to Kenya. But we could not have done it without being this private company the lead. But we managed to get to the company because we had an office in Japan that identified the company. So I think that it is important to see that you need to have several elements. Last but not least is certainly the aspect of the regulatory framework, the governance. It's fundamental. And this goes in relation to addressing broader issues of sustainability, but maybe more concrete cybersecurity. Concrete technological threats are there, and this requires, I think, strong intervention from the government in cooperation with the private sector through other tools like standards, etc. But this is fundamental. One element to conclude and go back to the inequality. In UNIDO, we found in our industrial development report, because it's part of what we do, is to look what is the concentration of the patents. Only 10% is 90% of the patents related to the digital production are in 10% of the economies. And the production is in 63% of the countries. This means developing countries are completely excluded. There are exceptions, there may be some exceptions, but this has to be addressed. So I think that in order to move forward, you need to address, put people at the core, SMEs at the core, be gender responsible and certainly sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo. And I really liked your initial example of Korea's investment because it's real, and you've sort of seen this evolution, this journey of Korea targeting Central American market. There are one takeaway from your comments, and then I will, I think, build on a theme that I'm seeing here. But the takeaway is, would it be fair to say that there's a triangle emerging of collaboration, of partnership between investors or companies, IPAs, and IOs that can provide training and support, and sort of the three working together can maybe realize digital FDI opportunities because the investors have the capital, the interest, the IPAs have the relationships, they're the government, policy advocates, but then the IOs can provide the training, the capacity building to sort of plug any gaps that they see. What do you think of that triangle?
Well, I could only subscribe to that. And we have to define very clearly the roles. I think that the WEF, you are doing a wonderful job on digital transformation. UNIDO, we have to develop the tools, we have to develop the methodologies and pass it on as soon as possible to the local players, be it IPAs or other local institutions. Sometimes we tend to hang on too long to this, and then there is a distortion of roles. I think it is important to strengthen the national, regional ecosystem, and our role is to look forward, to have thought leadership, but bring it immediately to the countries so that they can be better prepared to bring the investors in.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, which I fully subscribe to. I think startups have become a theme here. And I think startups are a theme, SMEs and startups, because of the importance of jobs and development. And I know this is something that Mauricio has been thinking about, the role of startup ecosystems, especially in the European example and case, but I think this is something relevant to every IPA and every economy, how to foster investment in startups. So I'd like to go back to Mauricio and ask him for his thoughts in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just closing on the file of semiconductors, And just one word on how it is current for every country and every IPA. Those companies are really global investors, because building chips is not just to build one piece. There is the design, there is the basic R&D, there is the primary building, there is the back end, and there is the packaging. So in our case, for instance, we have fairly significant operations in countries such as the Philippines, Malaysia. We've been forever in Singapore, talking about the EDB, the Economic Development Board of Singapore, and NST had a relationship for the last 25, 30 years, and talking about how you can really forge and be proactive about it. But then we are in Morocco, we are in Malta, so on and so forth, and our peers are the same. So there is a unique opportunity really to provide equity in terms of social equity and bring up the digital bar. Back to your question, Mr. Chairman, on the ecosystems. Europe has started late. Europe is catching up. The United States have natural ecosystems around their block leading universities. And those are a case study that is very difficult for Europe to imitate and to possibly to follow. Europe has chosen a different route, which is also different, for instance, from China. China has got the fuel of this century, has got a lot of people, has got data. So China is actually grouping those data and building ecosystems vertically where they need to be in this very large critical mass provided by the number of people. And India, I've heard, is doing something similarly. Back into the questions about Europe, large countries such as Germany and France were at close to zero in terms of digitalization 5 years ago. Italy is still quite behind. Those two specific large countries have done, in different ways, significant steps. Let me just make one comment on France. France, thanks to a couple of large, very large events and programs, are really caught up quite well, and is today an example in Europe on building ecosystems, attracting FDIs, and the result, producing unicorns. There is a correlation. You build a system, you get the FDIs in, and here you get the unicorns, which can be then communicated, people get enthusiastic, and things get working, and really there is momentum. I would comment on one specific program that really France excelled. It's a private program that has been sponsored massively and enthusiastically by the government and the institutions. It's called Station F. Station F is a large real estate, is a station, not far from Bercy, if you go down on the Seine, in front of the Ministry of Treasury. And it's a large outfit of around 100,000 square meters, of which half of it, probably 40,000 square meters, are dedicated to a fully integrated house for startups. You have capacity for around 5,000 to 6,000 people, and is a system of in and up or out. You can stay in for up to 12 months, and if you don't produce the idea, you're out. It's a fascinating place for people who happen to go to Paris. I strongly recommend to go and visit. 3 blocks. The first and very important, food. There is a large food court. You would say, why do you talk about food court? Extremely important. You're not going to have success unless you create traffic critical mass. Youngsters from everywhere in the world, they like to be, open, flexible, casual. They don't need to buy food, but if they like to buy food, they need to sit down, large food court. Second block, there is the startup block, where you can plug in at very cheap rates, and you have everything. You can set up a company in less than a day. You can send everything you want around the globe. You got the best connectivity, so on and so forth. So the institutions there have been providing the best infrastructure. And then the third block, very important into the triangle that the colleagues were mentioning before, there are 40 corporate venture programs, i.e. companies such as LVMH or Google. I don't know if SAP is there. They are there, and they do produce a program that has a digital content for what they do, but they have access to those 2,000 to 2,500 startups that can actually absorb what the company does in a very synergistic way. So you get traffic, critical mass, infrastructure, simplicity, no bureaucracy, flat. That's what is needed. Here are the results. That program, together with France Vivatech, which is a digital enthusiastic program, which I will not mention for sake of time, produced in France a number of unicorns that go from 1 to 27. So they went from 1 to 27 in the last 5 years. So that is the result. And it is important, the venture capital community as a critical attraction to be there inside of those ecosystems. France was very starting 5 years ago, thanks to this initiative, really went very, very far, very quickly. And now they got virtual venture capitalists coming from France, but at the same time, the population in that ecosystem is 40% coming from outside of France. Here is again the concept, here I finish on this example, of digital FDI. And one last point, very important, you cannot be everything in every subject in digital. There they chose light tech, it's mainly software. For instance, on a study that we're doing in Milan, we probably would be going for deep tech or verticals of deep tech, because the university that we got where we're focusing in has got those kind of deep structures such as semiconductor, optics, so on and so forth. But there again, it's important as you build your place, your house, and you attract people from around the globe as a population of innovators and startuppers, that you got the right ingredients at the beginning. Because then if you get the right people as startuppers, venture capitals will come, and eventually large corporates will join, and that is the blend of success. More to come on other countries, if so you desire, and there is interest.
Thank you so much. I think you just gave us the playbook for France's success. I hope France doesn't mind that you've revealed their secret strategy to develop their unicorns. No, in all seriousness, it sounds like a formula that could be relevant for any country represented by IPAs here today. So thank you very much for that.
And if you, in honor of Caroline, if there is time, I will tell something very positive about Germany.
Please go ahead. Did you want to follow up with something? A comment? No.
Germany has followed a very interesting model that I don't think is so well known. I mean, the Berlin success, everybody knows. But there is another interesting feature. If you look at, there are the large German industrial groups. If you take the top 20 in different sectors, what they did, those are all family owned. Each of them picked, and I don't have evidence, but I think there is a consultation. They pick their core business, which is old-fashioned, And they decided to put a humongous amount of money in digital startups. Here are the results. Out of the top 20, there are 8 large groups that have more than 5 billion each invested in digital startups and growing startups in their core business. There are 5 that have between 1 to 5 billion invested in their own core groups, digital new startups. And there are 5 that are in 5 billion plus in businesses that are related but not core. Only 2 have invested in financial startups. What does it mean? You can invest in startup in an ecosystem, but you need to decide if you want to invest in where you're already good or you have a diversification. Germany, together with the university, has decided to double up for the long-term future on what they, I think quite properly, think they're good.
Thank you for that other example. Caroline, please, you want to jump in? And before I give you the floor, if I may just remind everyone to prepare a question, because I was told I could go over a little bit, because we started a little bit late, but not by too much. So we'll open it up for a question after Caroline. Please, Caroline.
Yeah, let me just tap onto that, because of course I had to look it up as to whether we are engaged. And not only we're engaged, but we acquired the Parisian chatbot from Microsoft's AI factory out of the Station F. But we had our own accelerator in France, and that's probably the more important point, already in 2018 for 50 startups. And that's a model that we replicate in all of the growth markets where we're engaged, because, as I said at the outset, our future also depends on the integration, acquisition, different models of startup support that we provide, similar to what Maurizio described for France, around the globe. The second point that I just wanted to make, because Matthew, there's so much in this session. How many days have we got? Industry 4.0 is essentially, I need to defend Germany. I'm Canadian, but I'm essentially, I've been in Germany so long. Industry 4.0 is essentially a German concept, more or less invented by one of our CEOs in the SAP history, Mr. Henning Kagermann. The Germans are very good at industrial automation. And this next generation, machine learning, AI-driven industrial automation is essentially a German concept, and something now with Gaia X that's become a European concept. We still have this much advantage over others globally, and really need to keep pushing this. We don't have a chance to go in depth into that conversation here, but it's something that we must remember for the future of digital transformation. That industrial progress that's taken a huge leap forward in recent years, regardless of COVID and financial crisis issues, is really a big advantage in the European market.
Thank you. So it's a real-world example where we've seen that SAP has been able to benefit from this very approach, an approach that could be relevant to other economies than France and Germany. I saw a gentleman put his hand up. I'd like to maybe take any 2 or 3 questions if there are, and then open it up to the panelists to see who might want to react. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Patrick Bench from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the former director of FDI development in Massachusetts, and now lead government affairs and consultancy firm in Boston. Thank you all for speaking really inspiring and humbling this morning. My question, I've been listening to all of you, is this. We're in a rapidly emerging opportunities for digital FDI, not only at the national level, subnational and municipal level. To talk that talk and meet those opportunities, the investment promotion agencies, their teams need to be ready to meet those opportunities. We'll go to you, Mr. Chairman, for the panel, but how do you see how IPAs can both attract, build a culture that's ready for these emerging industries, but also most notably developing the skill sets to be able to talk the talk, in other words, being ready for those venture-backed opportunities and in a highly competitive atmosphere. Thank you all.
Thank you for the question. Do we have any more questions? If not, I would invite perhaps Pilar or Bernardo, if they have any thoughts, to react to the question.
I'll jump in. Nice to meet you, and thank you for the question. So the first thing of how we talk the walk, or walk the talk, is the role of the IPA is our clients are the companies. That's it. Nobody else. You bring a company, they become your client, you help them through the process, you grow with them, you visit with them, you visit headquarters, you look at all their financials, at all their earnings, and the private ones, where are they growing, how are they growing? Those are your clients, and you look after your clients. And so you learn to speak their language, and then you're the translator to whatever organization or whatever other ministry is. So you need to be ingrained. You have to have this, you're part of their team. You advocate for them, you form groups, you invite them. I'll tell you, how does Costa Rica, how have we done it? Last year, it's a record number of projects, 101 new, projects in Costa Rica. 70 of them were reinvestment projects. That is because we are next to them, exactly doing what you're thinking. We're talking, we're understanding, what are we doing? What are you doing? How am I going to be of relevance to you? So in our case, that's what we do. Our clients are first and foremost.
Maybe to add, we undertook a survey on digitalization of IPAs. And definitely, I think many of the responses are to be found there, because if you want to talk, to follow a narrative of digitalization, you have to yourself make the effort. And what we have seen in the survey is that there was a lot of awareness raising in the context of COVID. The awareness of the need of digitalization is there. There have been some efforts on smaller bits of the investment facilitation process to be digitalized, but there is no systematic and systemic way that IPAs are addressing the issue. I think only 21% had a strategy how to move their digitalization forward. And I think this is the key message, to walk the talk, to move from awareness to action. Yeah, and this has not yet happened. I think we are in the midst of it, but from our perspective, the IPAs need support for that. There is a need for jointly, I think it's a joint effort we have to do, is to provide the tools, the methodologies, so that this process becomes reality. But you cannot be conversant on digitalization without making the effort yourself. Just maybe to finalize that loop is also there is little awareness of the challenges that go with it. You're talking about data that you have that you are the custodian. Yeah, so you have to be extremely cautious how you handle this data. So cybersecurity is fundamental. We saw that there is not even awareness of minimum standards that help you to manage properly your management system of information security. So there is a lot of homework to be done. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo. And I think I'm going to bring this panel to a close, because I can sense that people have lunch appointments and they want to network and so forth. So I just want to say a couple closing words. First of all, please take up Bernardo on his offer to help with the digital transformation of IPAs. Digital FDI is about also digital capacity in the IPAs themselves. I want to thank this panel for the incredible insights and operational experience. I think that's what we really need in these conversations, is people who've done it and who can share their experience. I'm going to leave you with 7 S's, to take away and see if they're useful in your own IPA work. Attracting investment in semiconductors, not forgetting about digital skills, not leaving SMEs behind, focusing on startups, including Station H, and avoiding silos, which can really fragment economies, and how to integrate all this in perhaps a digital FDI strategy. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And let me congratulate my panelists.
To whom?
Happy lunch, everybody.